So what role does discipline have in healing? Don't usually put the two words healing and discipline together. Either a person is big on discipline or they're big on healing. They're not usually big on both. That's a fault. I think that's a big fault. You can't really heal without discipline for a very, very simple reason. Whatever the pain was, whatever the trauma was initially, in order to overcome it, there is really only one way in the civilized world that's legal, and that is through the laying down of new neural pathways and through the trying to create a space for neuroplasticity so that new neural pathways can be laid down. If we were doing it in a non-legal, non-safe way, you could use psychedelics and it would be faster. You could use trauma, you could re-traumatize. So when we talk about initiation rituals and so on, they tend to be traumatic for a reason, because when people are traumatized, neuroplasticity is created and new neural pathways are laid down. So I can't come to your house and initiate you painfully. It also wouldn't really work. You can only really do those things naively. So if you, in the modern Western world, you can't. It's always going to be a very pale simulation of the original thing, because you don't believe in the spiritual ideological system that goes with that, and there isn't one. So that's not an option. Psychedelics, I don't recommend. It's Pandora's box, and neither I or anyone else can guarantee what will jump out. So I really feel like the most controllable way and the most righteous way of doing it, to be quite honest, is through discipline and through consistent action repeated multiple times a day for extended periods of time. And I think that that's enough. You will have to change those actions. You will have to recalibrate as you go to find what's going to work best for you. And you can't just do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. A quote that's often attributed to Einstein. Don't know if he ever said it. You will have to recalibrate. You will have to try new things on this journey towards healing. But how are you going to do anything with no discipline? You can't set down new neural pathways by just talking to yourself. Well, you can, and it works to a degree. Okay, so let's say there's like a hierarchy of ways of setting neural pathways. Trauma would be the best. Psychedelics would be the second best. And then after that, you'd have consistent action over time. Preferably, the more boundary breaking and the more stressful, the better. But I'm not telling you to do that, because I don't know how fragile. I can't release a video that says do that. In the same way I can't release a video that says do psychedelics, because I don't know how fragile the multitude of people watching this could be. You could have 1,000 people and only one person could be quite fragile, and it could really, really hurt them to offer advice like that. So you have to be extremely careful. So at the top level of the hierarchy would be very, very, very stressful new patterns of behavior that you lay down. Very stressful, like as much as you could bear. That would be like a mini trauma, and it would create neuroplasticity, and it would set down new neural pathways as you force yourself out of the comfort zone to do new things. I don't recommend that. I don't recommend it. Apart from the fact it hurts, and there's no point doing things that hurt unless they're really, really necessary. It's not safe to recommend doing things like that. So then down the scale from that, you have new habits, new patterns of behavior that you can engage in on a daily basis, which is not a bad idea. And they can be graded, like at the very top of the hierarchy would be more stressful to least stressful. Then below that, you would have therapy. Yes, that's where I grade therapy on a scale of making real change. And you could say, well, that's very dismissive of therapy. No, it's not. It's not. I'm a big believer in talk therapy. You would have probably, if I could be a bit cheeky with this one, I'd say maybe I would put group therapy higher than individual talk therapy. Immersive group therapy would be higher than that, but I don't recommend it. Why? Well, the more immersive and the more groupy the therapy, the more culty it gets. So you thought I was offering you a solution, and I'm like, it does work in theory. It's better in groups for reasons we can get into in another video if people are interested. It is better in groups, and it's better if it's immersive because it generates more neuroplasticity. It's all about neuroplasticity ultimately. The problem is in the brain. It's a brain problem, so we have to make changes in the brain. The brain doesn't want to change, doesn't want to do that, burns calories, it's not efficient. It wants to repeat, it wants to stay in the same cycle because I don't think, I've said this before, I don't think our genetics really care whether we're happy or not. I'm not sure the oldest survival systems of the body really care if we're totally spiritually expressing our individuated authenticity. I think the most primal systems of the body just want you to stay alive. And if you were stayed alive yesterday, but you were miserable, your body and your brain will tend towards just making you do the same thing again. But you stayed alive. What's the big deal? You don't need to change anything. Don't go crazy. Just do it again. If we want to break out, we have to do big things. We have to push ourselves outside the comfort zone. So what did I say? I said like really, really stressful action, there was deep trauma, initiatory trauma, probably facing a fear of death or some horrible phobia, psychedelics, intense psychedelic experience, less intense psychedelic experience. Then it would be taking action right outside the comfort zone, right the way through to the comfort zone. Then it would be immersive group therapy. Then it would be group therapy. Then it would be one-to-one talk therapy. And then it would be, talking to yourself, offering the kind of work that I do with people through YouTube and through the courses I sell over on my website. It's a way of getting things done, but it's safe and controllable. You can do it from your living room. It takes discipline. It's a bit of a hassle, but it does the job. It gets the job done. So that's how I would rate it. Talk therapy is useful. Self-therapy, useful. But the lower down that hierarchy of intensity, you could draw a graph like this. The lower down the hierarchy of intensity, the safer you are and the less pain there is, but the longer it takes in time. I don't know how, if somebody could draw me that graph, I'd be so grateful. So if it's really high up here, it would, if time was being factored along here, it would be a short period of time. And then as you go down the graph, it gets safer. Is that the y-axis or the x-axis? But it takes longer time. So you'd end up with like this, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I would recommend this course for people who are looking to make changes and they want to make changes rapidly, but it's not therapy. It's not talking to yourself. It's higher up the hierarchy for discomfort, because you have to do it every day and it makes you leave the house. And when you leave the house, you have to think certain things, you have to say certain words inside of your head, and you have to take certain physical actions. And I think that's what makes it powerful, because it reconnects us to ritual, it reconnects us to action, and it reconnects us to the things that actually work. So if you are interested, we have a course called The Discipline that applies the principle of discipline to the healing process. And if you want to find out more information about that, just have a look in the description box below. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and for your attention. And I look forward to speaking to you again very soon. Cheers.